Have you ever been questioned by atheists about the Bible and um, been told that the Bible has conflicting stories and actually there's proof in the Bible that it's all nonsense and that the Bible is a lie? I get this quite often, and I actually had this morning again. Atheist friend of mine told me that he can prove that Christianity is a lie by looking at the very first thing that happened in the Bible, and it talks about the Garden of Eden. So I want to just touch on a number of things, well, two things really. But yeah, just subscribe to my channel and leave a comment if you want to. I think it's important to realize when you have this situation where atheists come to us, is just not to respond in anger, but to just respond with facts. The specific topic that what was brought up in this conversation is that in the very beginning, Adam and Eve, lived the perfect life, lived in paradise, and God told them they can't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and if they do, they would surely die. So the argument is, well, they ate from it and they didn't die. I said, well, they did die. They died a spiritual death, if you want to really look at it that way. But I think it goes deeper than that. I was just thinking that, when you look at the psychological aspect of what you go through, when you self-realize, when you become self-focused, and that's exactly what happened. What's the first thing that Adam and Eve did after eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Is that they realized they were naked. So they showed awareness of their vulnerability. So instead of them living an outward view where they look out for others around them and animals and everything else that they were in paradise, they started looking inwards, and it become a situation of self-realization. And I think that's important to realize, because from a psychological aspect, or from a psychological view, when you yourself vulnerable and worried and scared, because they clothe themselves and then they hid from God. So you're in a place of fear, and you're in a place of realizing what you've done is wrong, and you realize that you're vulnerable and that you're covering yourself up. And I think psychologically speaking, if you're in that situation, then you know what can hurt you. And when you know what can hurt you, then you know very well what can hurt others. So it's something to think about in that sense. Many people will look at it as just a story, but it runs so much deeper than that. There's a psychology behind it, and there's a truth behind it that we often overlook. You died a spiritual death because you died to what God created us as. When they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they literally gained knowledge of the possibility or evil itself, and therefore enabled them to look inward and to act from a vulnerable point of view, which we were never originally made to be in. And that aspect of you being scared and worried puts you on the back foot and puts you in a fight or flight mode, and it makes you dangerous, and indirectly that makes you evil if you allow it to make you evil. So we're all born into sin, we all act out. The other aspect of it is if you look at little kids, as small as what they are, they tend to do things to hurt others. If a little kid has a toy and someone else takes a toy from him, he will hurt the other kid. It's kind of like it's in our nature to hurt others to get what we want, and that's an inward looking way, because we look at life from a selfish point of view, and we tend to look at in a way that we want to gain things for ourselves. And it's an act of selfishness, and an act of selfishness is an act of evil. We have that knowledge of good and evil. So with that knowledge of good and evil, let's try to do good instead of evil. Let's rely on God, rely on His wisdom, and pray into it and live into it on a daily basis.